Starting and running a business is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Whether you're an established business owner or thinking about starting a side hustle to earn extra income, I am here to teach you how to show up as your unfiltered self, level up your business, and thrive as a mompreneur. Let's embrace the chaos and start enjoying the journey together. I'm Amy Traw, and you're listening to the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. Welcome back into the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. I am joined today by LaKeisha, owner of Well Beauty Lab, and I cannot wait to dive into her story about pivoting her business, and she is going to teach us tips to decrease the overwhelm. Welcome, LaKeisha, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I am looking forward to this conversation. So can you share your story with us? Tell us about who you are and just your business story. We'd love to learn more.
Sure. So I started in business in 2013, 6 months after my first child was born. And I started a plant-based skincare brand. And it probably wasn't the best business for me to start because I'm not one of those people who is like super into skincare and beauty and makeup. I'm really like a less is more, like wash my face, moisturize it, and move on with my life. But I started it because I struggled with my fertility. My daughter was conceived via IUI. And during that process, I took a kind of a natural approach to living. So very non-toxic, watching what I eat, watching what I use. And so that's kind of what prompted me to start the business. So it came more from a place of passion and what I wanted to put on my body. But I didn't take into account what it was going to take to actually sustain a skincare brand. But I did it. I did it for 8 years. And I kept on chugging along and chugging along, but it was very time consuming. And when I had one kid, it was okay. But in 2018, I'm sorry, I gave birth to twins. They were born 5.5 weeks early. I had a very difficult pregnancy, and I was trying to run my business, my very physical, hands-on business, while on bed rest for 5 months, and then with newborn twins. So to say that I was overwhelmed would be very much of an understatement. And I had a really great support system. My husband was fantastic. My mother-in-law lives close by and she was retired, so she was very hands-on. My mom, stepped in whenever she had time, took time off of work. She was here. So I had a great support system, but still was struggling. But I kept going because that's what we do, right? We put our minds to something and we're like, nope, I'm just going to push through. I'm going to keep going. And it wasn't until, the whole world shut down in 2020 that I was like, I might need to do something different. But even still, I kept going. So now I have 3 kids at home. My husband works in the pharmaceutical industry, and so he was still at work. He still had to go. So it was me and my 3 kiddos at home, trying to homeschool and run a business. And eventually, by the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, I hit a wall. I just could not. I was barely functioning. I wasn't sleeping. And my body was showing the signs of the wear and tear. So not only was I mentally exhausted, but I was physically getting sick because I was so overwhelmed and so exhausted. And so by mid 2021, I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. My heart's not in it. It's too physically demanding. Like I need to do something else. And so I took a break. And as I was taking that break, everybody around me was like, what are you doing? You can't shut your business down. Well, what about your customers? Well, what about all the work you put in? And I'm like, I hear you guys, but I just physically cannot, like, I can't do it anymore. And so I took some time. I sat and I thought about it. And I was like, well, what are we going to do? Like, I got to do something because I just one of those people who has to be doing something. And I'm like, well, wellness has always been really important to me. And I'm one of those planner people. Like the family needs a birthday party planned, they call me. We're going on family vacation, they call me. Like I'm that person. And so I said, well, you know what? Maybe we'll focus on wellness and maybe I can use my story to inspire other moms to do better, to take care of themselves, to recognize the warning signs earlier. And so that's what I started to do. And so when I pivoted to Well Beauty Lab, my focus was really on how can we make wellness less superficial and more practical for moms who are in the same position that I am in. And that's really been my focus ever since. And now it's really about, okay, where are our priorities, right? And let's stop overscheduling ourselves and let's really create the life that we want and not the one everybody else says we're supposed to have. So that's how I ended up where I am today.
Oh my gosh, so good. So many things you just said. I appreciate that you shared, yeah, you struggled. You went through some things that, yes, you can have everything going in your favor. You can have that amazing support system around you. But at the end of the day, you realize that your heart wasn't in it. And that's a hard place to be.
It
When you
is.
finally realize that, I went through that with a business pivot myself. And it creates a lot of conflict and a lot of feelings come up because you almost feel guilty in a way because
Yeah.
it's like your baby. You grow it to exactly where you envisioned, exactly what you wanted, but something feels off.
Hmm.
And that's tough. Now, you mentioned along the way you started to notice some warning signs. What warning signs did you notice that, you know what, I'm starting to get burnout? I'm starting to notice that this isn't really my passion anymore. I'm moving on to another stage of life.
So there were a couple of things. I think the first one is the physical signs. So I've always been a person where I get stressed and I can't sleep, right? And so we know what it's like. We have that insomnia. You're sitting in bed, you're staring at the ceiling all night long. And for me, I'm not a morning person either. So not sleeping at night and then I wake up in the morning and I'm super cranky. Um, and so when that started to become the norm, I was like, okay, something's off here. We're going to need to do better. But then I started to suffer physically as well. And so it was actually early 2022. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia because I'm like, my body physically hurts. And so now I'm like, I can't even get up in the morning because I'm in so much pain. And I go to the doctor. I'm like, Doc, what's happening? Like, explain, please. And she's like, yeah, I think this is what it is. And I'm like, well, how do we manage this? How do we fix it? She's like, you got to manage your stress. Mm. I'm gonna need us to come up with a better plan
Right?
because that's not it. She's like, no, I need you to think about when you're not, in so much pain, what does life look like for you then? And I'm like, okay, I get it. I understand. And then from a business perspective, it was really when the things that I used to enjoy doing in my business, I could no longer use discipline to force myself to do, right? Because we know in business, there's the part in the beginning where you're super passionate and you're all gun ho and you're like, yes, I can do this. And you dive right in. But then that kind of wanes a little bit. And then discipline has to kick in order for us to just, keep building and keep going and do the work that we need to do. But I got to a point where discipline wasn't working. And my brain was just like, nope, we're not going to think about it. No, you can't market. No, you can't talk about this again. No, and I'm a super creative person. I like to make, whether it's physically make or, think up things. And there was nothing. Like I was drawing huge blanks. And I'm like, no, something about this just isn't right. And I was looking at some of my colleagues in the business and I'm like, guys, how are you still going? What, like, am I missing something? And I think we also get to a point in life when you're doing everything conceivably right, but it's not working. So you're doing everything that you know you're supposed to be doing, but it's still not working. The reason is that that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And I don't know how many of your listeners believe in God or Christian, but I hold the faith that your purpose will make room for you. And so if it's your purpose, those things will begin to align. And if it's not your purpose, it will be blocked. And that was the point that I hit.
That is so beautifully stated. And I cannot tell you what an impact that one statement will make for so many of our listeners. Because you're absolutely right. When we're not fulfilling our purpose, it's hard. It makes everything exponentially hard. So, leaning into those challenging times, leaning into, really taking the intentional time to analyze, am I fulfilling my purpose? What is my purpose?
Mhm.
And sometimes it takes hitting a wall to be that wake up call,
Yeah.
to be like, I am physically exhausted, I am mentally drained, and it's okay to accept that it's
Yes.
okay. And I love what you stated too about discipline. Even, when you've reached that point in your business, yes, there's always going to be things where you don't really love or enjoy, but even when you're disciplined and not able to make those things happen, that's a big wake-up call.
Yes.
That should be a wake-up call to tell you, what am I doing? What
Mhm.
purpose am I fulfilling in this world? Like you said, whether you have faith or believe in spirituality, just some sort of purpose. What is that?
Right.
That is such a powerful statement. I love it. And two, I love how with your pivot, we have to give ourselves credit that, okay, you know what? This first business, it didn't exactly play out like I had hoped, but I learned a heck of a lot. Have you noticed your
Yes.
second business? It's come together so much faster and you're thriving so much sooner just because you already had those solid foundations into place.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's the business acumen, right? So even if the industry is different, even if the work that you do is different, there are certain basic business principles, especially when you operate on the online space. So when you talk about marketing and collaborations and all those things, it's the same regardless of what you do. So to be able to take all of those skills and not be starting from scratch, it's like a cheat code, right? It's like, okay, I already know that I need to do these 5 things or whatever, however many things to get me started on the right track. So that definitely made it a lot easier. And then for me, having built relationships, right? Working in community with other people, um, again, gave me 5 steps ahead of where I was when I first started my first business. So I definitely say take all the lessons, everything that you had, even if you're starting something that is completely unrelated, take all the lessons you learned because I guarantee they will be helpful.
Right, exactly. You've learned so much and you're literally collapsing time for yourself. It's
Mhm.
okay to pivot. Give yourself permission. And two, it's so important what you just touched upon community, surrounding yourself with community of other business owners that get it, that understand the roller coaster that we are
Mhm.
all on, because there are days when you can feel on top of the world and the very next, hour, you feel, down in the dumps and are questioning everything. And just knowing that you're not alone and having those relationships and having that community be like, you know what? This will pass. It's okay.
Mhm.
Just keep going. Look at the value you bring to the world. Look at what you're doing. Like, you can do it because you built such a successful business in the first place. Like, you can do this again.
Right.
Got this. You have the know how. It's just starting again at chapter one, putting those blinders on. So we're not getting into comparison mode with everybody else that's on their chapter 20
Right.
and providing the value that you bring to the world.
Yeah, and it's so important, I think, to have, some people call them accountability partners. People like to join masterminds or things like that. And I have a group of ladies who um, I began working with when we were all in the beauty industry. And that's not the case anymore. But we still are there as a sounding board for each other. We're still there to help encourage each other. And I think it's so wonderful. And I'm so grateful for those ladies because even when I decided to pivot, I went to them and I was like, you know what, guys, I don't think my heart's in it anymore. And they were like, you know what, whatever you come up with next will be great. And it
Yeah.
was just so wonderful to have that source of encouragement, especially when everybody else around me was looking at me like I was crazy. But
Right.
they understood the ebbs and flows of business. And
Right.
so they understood that sometimes we get to that point and we need to make adjustments. So gather those people, whoever they are, two or three, and keep them close and use them as a sounding board and be an encouragement for each other.
So, so important. And accountability partners truly propel us forwards. It
Mhm.
just really like holds us to those standards. And I don't know, for me, it has exponentially grown my business so quickly just because it's like, all right, I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to be checking back in with one of my friends like, hey,
Right,
like what did you accomplish this week? Okay, what did I accomplish this week? All right, what's on the agenda next? That
right.
way, you're not staying stagnant in business. They're challenging you to think bigger, to be
Mhm.
better, and to demand better. I mean, I think that's incredible that we can provide that support for one another. And it's just it's reciprocal too.
Right,
You pour into another woman and then you're receiving that same encouragement and support. So that community and relationships are so key to a thriving business. LaKeisha, this was a fabulous conversation. Where can we learn more about Well Beauty Lab?
so you can find us on our website, wellbeautylab.com. You can find us on Instagram at wellbeautylab. It'll give you all the information you need to know, how you can work with me, some of the resources we offer. That would be the best place to look for us.
That is awesome. Before we leave, can you give us one final takeaway or piece of advice?
Yeah, I want to say give yourself the grace and the space to be who you need to be. Don't try to conform yourself to someone else's expectations. Don't try to live your life the way other people said that you need to live it. Be who you need to be in this season of your life. And that is how you're going to get to where you want to be.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. LaKeisha, thank you so much for joining us today. And until next time, stop dreaming and start taking messy action. You've got this. Are you loving what you're hearing? Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.